Hey YouTubers, it's Smoking Essie. So anyway, or Evan for the next video today. So something kind of damn cool, which basically I want to discuss a ramble right now. Nice big ass ramble like the big ass cigar. Now FYI, this will be a demonetized video. I am fully aware of it. I am fully okay with it. So demonetized video. Anyway, this is going to be discussing a topic right now, nice big ass topic like the big ass cigar, which basically is there a difference between a dwarf and a midget? And are they two different things? And actually, they are two entirely different things. A lot of people, a hell of a lot of people don't know this. There's actually a huge difference between calling somebody a dwarf or dwarfism versus calling somebody a midget. They're actually two entirely different things. And I actually didn't know up until very recently, very fucking recently, there was actually a huge difference between the two. So when I was a kid, my mother actually doesn't even know this. Mama Smoking Essie, she doesn't actually fucking know this. It's like, she actually doesn't know this shit. It's like, she actually thinks they're the same thing. A dwarf and a midget are two different, disabilities. For example, a dwarf is dwarfism, and a midget is a different type of disability. Actually, they're two entirely different things. Now, obviously, I'm not a fucking doctor. It's like, I'm not a fucking doctor. So, disclaimer, I am not a damn doctor. I'm not a, genetic doctor. It's like, big ass doctor like the big ass cigar. But they are actually two entirely different things. I was always told when I was a kid, and this is not meant to be offensive or derogatory, I'm not trying to be offensive towards little people or people with dwarfism. It's like, believe me, this is educational content, This is actually a serious topic. And I actually didn't know up until very recently there was a big difference between a dwarf and a midget. Apparently, they're two entirely different things, and the reason you might say, well, Smoking Essie, that's goddamn wrong. It's like, they're the same thing. Actually, it's two different things. So, to answer the question, to answer the shit, basically, a dwarf is the proper name for a small person. Some people call them small people, some people call them little people, some people call them dwarfs, and the technical name, the medical term, is dwarfism. A small person, aka a little person, is somebody with dwarfism, somebody who has a small stature, and somebody who's a little person in general. The word midget is actually a slur or a put down. It's a outdated word that was used in the probably 19th century, early 20th century. That was actually used associated with freak shows like carnival shows. They would say, introducing the midget. So that's where that term came from, is a outdated freak show, like when they used to exploit people and used to make fun of people with disabilities. They would actually say, introducing the midget. So that's where that term actually came from. It's like, like the R word, for example, people would call people a retard, or people would say, for example, that person is retarded, that person is, for example, like Downs instead of Down syndrome, it's the same shit. It's like, basically, that's where that term came from, is to put people down, demean people, to be derogatory towards people with, dwarfism. So it's not the same thing. See, when I was a younger person, when I was a child myself, my mother told me, and believe me, my mother is anything but prejudiced. She's like the most, supportive of all disabilities. She's super for special ed. She's super for, disabilities in general. She is anything but a prejudiced person. Like, she is the complete opposite of a prejudiced person. And she told me when I was a little kid that a midget and a dwarf are actually two different things, meaning a dwarf is one disability and a midget is another disability. They're actually two different medical conditions, and actually that's completely untrue. Actually, very recently asked, like the big ass cigar, my mother actually said, yeah, I think that woman on that TV show on TLC is more of a midget than a dwarf. And actually, that's completely incorrect. They're two entirely different things. It's almost like, I'll give you a perfect example, the words idiot, imbecile, and moron, are also technically derogatory. And up until I told my father this about 6 months ago, up until I told my father this, he actually didn't know that. He actually didn't know this shit, that the words moron, imbecile, idiot, stupid, and dumb used to refer to people with mental retardation and disabilities like Down syndrome. He actually didn't know that. He's like, wow, really? That's really true, Evan? That's really true. Papa smoking SE. He actually didn't know that shit. It's like, he actually didn't know that the words moron, imbecile, and idiot were actually used to describe a person's IQ. For example, somebody who is profoundly mentally retarded would be considered an idiot. Somebody who was moderately mentally retarded would be considered an imbecile, and somebody who was mildly mentally retarded would be considered a moron. Sorry, a moron. So he actually didn't know that up until recently, and I didn't know up until maybe about a couple years ago. There's actually a huge difference between, well, maybe more I don't know exactly when I found out. I don't know the exact date, but I didn't know up until pretty recently that there's a big difference between calling a little person a midget versus calling a little person a dwarf. There's actually a huge difference. A midget is not a medical condition. There's no medical condition called midget to my knowledge. There's no such thing as midgetism. So the proper term is dwarfism, and people who are dwarfs or little people like to be referred to as little people or small people, not midgets. The word midget is actually considered to be offensive and derogatory. People call it the M word, the M word. Just like people who are autistic, people who have autism, and people who have Down syndrome, and people who participate in like Special Olympics, for example, call the word retard the R word. They call the R word, just like black people call the N word the N word, just like, Hispanic people call the S word, just like Italian people call the W word, Jewish people call the K word, the K word, etc., 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 etc. So it's actually a slur, it's actually a put down. So there's actually no medical condition called being a midget. It's like, just like there's no medical condition called being a retard. It's like, being the more proper term is developmentally delayed, not imbecile, idiot, or moron. So it's actually two entirely different things. And I actually didn't know that until very recently, which is very interesting ass, like the big ass cigar. So again, this video was not meant to be offensive. I'm not trying to offend anybody. I'm not trying to cause controversy or stir up shit. Bullshit is bullshit, but I just want to clarify for people who are wondering, there is a big difference between a dwarf and a midget. They're actually two entirely different things. Anyway, have a nice day. Pretty fucking cool. Bye.